Baby, let me just settle into this chair because what I'm about to say is going to shake the atmosphere, and I need every party crasher to brace themselves. Something just happened in this Diddy saga that snapped the whole story in half, and the wild part is it didn't come from a prosecutor, it didn't come from a judge, it didn't come from a victim, and it didn't come from the lawyers who keep trying to drag that man across the finish line like his legs gave out years ago. No. The person who just ended this case before it even got to the courthouse was the one man Diddy thought would never slip, his cameraman, his filmmaker, his behind-the-scenes shadow that followed him like a second spine. And the moment this man opened his mouth and admitted that a freelancer touched that footage, the entire billion-dollar lawsuit evaporated like steam on a winter window because, let me tell you something, when ego meets evidence, the evidence always wins. Diddy really sat in that prison cell and convinced himself that Netflix stole something from him, knowing damn well he has spent 30 years filming himself like the world is his personal confessional booth. He films arguments, breakdowns, PR strategies, phone calls with people he's manipulating, spiritual delusions, moments of chaos, moments of fury, and God knows what else. And then he's shocked that the footage leaks? Sir, you made yourself a documentary before Netflix even rolled out the carpet. You handed them the plot, the dialogue, the lighting, and the damn bloopers. But here's where the story turns from messy to catastrophic, because Diddy opened his mouth and said Netflix legally obtained footage that he insists was stolen. First red flag. Then his own filmmaker jumped in and said, yeah, I didn't give Netflix anything. I left someone else in charge for 3 days. Baby, 3 days, not a year, not a production cycle, not a retirement era, just a long weekend. A long weekend is all it took for the castle to collapse. Because whoever that freelancer was, they had control of the footage. They had the hard drive. They were the ones with the raw files. And unless there was a contract, which, by the way, doesn't exist, that freelancer owned every second of it, meaning Netflix didn't steal anything. Netflix bought it, legally, fair and square. And that's where the billion-dollar fantasy screams into a brick wall. Because you can't sue someone for stealing something you never owned. You can't throw a tantrum over footage that was created by someone else's hands, on someone else's camera, under someone else's labor. Diddy is sitting in prison yelling about copyright infringement like he's a law student who skimmed the textbook for 5 minutes. Meanwhile, every lawyer in America is shaking their head like, baby, please, because the law is very clear. You only own the footage if the people who shot it signed away their rights. This freelancer did not. That means the lawsuit doesn't just fail. It never existed. But Diddy is banking on one thing, that the public doesn't understand how copyright works. He is hoping people think, my face is in it, therefore it's mine. No, sweetheart. That's not how this works. If that were true, every rapper would own every paparazzi photo ever taken of them. The right of publicity doesn't apply in criminal investigations. You don't get to say, that's my face, pull it down, when the footage is documenting crime, manipulation, witness tampering, jury influence, emotional coercion, and a whole catalog of behaviors that look like the trailer for a man who's been playing God with people's lives. So let's really break this open, because I need the party crashers to feel the weight of this moment. If Diddy actually had a case, a real case, he would have filed an injunction immediately, within hours, within minutes, within seconds. Do you understand the severity of an injunction? That is the stop everything button. That is the emergency brake on a train that's about to fly off the tracks. That is the court saying, hold on, wait, the harm is too great, freeze this right now. If the footage was truly illegal, Netflix wouldn't be streaming it. It would be gone already. They would have pulled it the moment the complaint was filed. But Diddy isn't filing anything. He's stalling. He's posturing. He's throwing smoke in front of people's faces and hoping the world confuses noise with truth, because he knows that the moment he files that lawsuit, Netflix gets something that will obliterate him. Discovery. Discovery is the devil's playground for the guilty. Discovery means every hard drive, every raw file, every deleted clip, every backup, every text message, every email, every whisper, every mistake. Every fragment of footage where he's pacing around a room, talking about witness lists and pressure tactics. You think Netflix wants to avoid that? Baby, Netflix is sitting in front of a lawyer's office, tapping their nails on the glass like, please sue us, please, we want the tapes, we want the secrets, we want everything. And that's the part that makes Diddy tremble, because he knows damn well that the footage Netflix already showed is just the tip of the iceberg. What's below the surface? The things his team has been desperately trying to bury for decades, the moments where he said the quiet parts out loud, the strategies where he tried to shape narratives, the abuse of power, the manipulation of the people around him, the conversations that make a jury lean back in their chair and say, oh yeah, he knew what he was doing. Discovery is what turns whispers into evidence. And the cameraman, bless his chaotic heart, just told the world, oh, I wasn't there. A freelancer handled it. Do you understand what that means? The freelancer might legally own the keys to Diddy's downfall. One man with a camera and no work-for-hire agreement might be the reason a billion-dollar mogul crumbles. That's why the lawsuit is DOA. That's why Diddy is yelling from the prison phone, like a man who finally realized karma doesn't care about your net worth. She moves on her own schedule, and hers is tighter than Beyoncé's Renaissance tour rehearsals. But here's what nobody's talking about, and this is where the conspiracy becomes undeniable. If that freelancer owned the footage, Netflix didn't need Diddy's permission. They didn't need his signature. They didn't need his team. They didn't need his clearance. Netflix bought the footage the same way they buy any documentary content, through legal licensing, meaning everything Diddy is yelling is smoke, noise, distraction. Because deep down, he's not angry that Netflix got the footage. He's angry that the footage exists, period. Let's go deeper, because this part right here gave me chills. Diddy has spent decades filming himself. He films things he should never film. He films things no one else would ever record. This man treats a camera like a therapist, a vault, a journal, and a weapon all at once. And that is the one habit that destroyed him. He didn't get taken down by an enemy. He didn't get taken down by a rival. He didn't get taken down by somebody he wronged. He got taken down by his own obsession with documenting his life like a reality show nobody asked for. He has more footage than the CIA and TMZ combined, but not enough sense to stop filming when he's incriminating himself. That's the downfall. That's the documentary. Netflix didn't expose him. Diddy exposed himself. Netflix just put the footage in order and added dramatic lighting. And I want to address something else, because this is the part the party crashers need to hear. This isn't just a legal failure. This is spiritual. This is a reckoning. This is what happens when you spend your life thinking you're above consequence, above truth, above accountability. When you run around hurting people, manipulating narratives, buying silence, shaping stories, and believing that power shields you from everything, eventually the universe steps in and hits you where it hurts the most. Your ego, your name, your legacy. Diddy isn't fighting Netflix, he's fighting karma. And karma is undefeated. Now, what we're watching isn't a lawsuit. It's a meltdown, a temper tantrum wrapped in legal jargon. A man who finally realizes he cannot outrun the evidence he created with his own two hands and his own damn camera crew. The cameraman didn't betray him. The cameraman told the truth. And sometimes the truth is the most dangerous thing in the world. Netflix is protected. The freelancer is protected. The law is protected. The footage is protected. Diddy is the only one out here swinging at ghosts, trying to convince the world he still has power when the walls around him say otherwise. And when he says, I'm suing for $1 billion, baby, that is fantasy fiction, written by a man who cannot accept that his chapter might be closing whether he signs off on it or not, because this case didn't fail. It ended before it began. And the cameraman is the one who ended it. Baby, let me settle into this because I can already feel my blood pressure dancing. There is something so darkly poetic about what is happening right now, and I don't know if people understand the spiritual symmetry in this moment. For decades, Diddy has been moving through life like the rules don't apply to him, like consequences don't apply to him, like people's pain is just background noise to his storyline. And now here we are, watching everything collapse under the weight of something so simple, so basic, so embarrassingly avoidable. Not paying for the footage he claims belongs to him. When you strip away the noise, that's the whole downfall right there. He didn't pay. He didn't secure rights. He didn't sign the paperwork. He didn't lock in ownership. And yet he's stunned that someone else held the keys to the kingdom? Baby, please. Nothing belongs to you until you pay for it. Not a house, not a car, not a contract, not a loyalty that you thought came free with manipulation. You cannot claim something you never purchased. You cannot scream ownership over something you never invested in. You cannot demand protection from a world you never honored. And the way this is unfolding, it's almost biblical. The same slick behavior he used to get over on people for decades became the same crack in the wall that swallowed him whole. That is how karma works. She does not need to come in loud. She does not need trumpets or storms. She quietly walks into the one place you never thought to protect: the paperwork, the payment, the contract, the fine print you never read because you were too used to people bowing at your feet. The downfall didn't come from a grand conspiracy. It came from unpaid debt. It came from unpaid labor. It came from the belief that people will always take scraps. And now the one man who had the footage walked away, took a break, handed the project to a freelancer, and that freelancer, whether intentionally or not, became the vessel of justice. A freelancer with no NDA, no work-for-hire contract, no agreement that handed ownership to Diddy. And because that contract didn't exist, the footage never belonged to Diddy in the first place, not 1 second of it. That's what makes this situation so wild. The lawsuit died before it even formed. The moment the cameraman spoke, the case evaporated into thin air. Because if you never paid the creator, you never owned the creation, and the irony is painful. The same man who built an empire controlling footage, controlling images, controlling narratives, controlling stories, controlling people's access to their own truth, ended up losing control because he didn't control the one thing he needed most: ownership paperwork. This is the kind of poetic justice you cannot write. This is the universe calling debts in full. And let's talk about the bigger picture, because I don't think folks understand how deep this goes. For decades, Diddy's power didn't just come from money. It came from documentation. It came from holding information over people. It came from having cameras rolling when they didn't realize the camera was rolling. It came from using recordings as leverage. He built a throne out of secrets. But the problem with building your kingdom on secrets is that one day the wrong secret becomes public. One day the wrong tape slips out of your hand. One day the footage you thought only you had access to ends up on a streaming platform with global distribution. And suddenly, you're not the storyteller anymore. You are the subject. You are the case study. You are the monster under the microscope. But the part that really shakes me is how the downfall didn't require a prosecutor. It didn't require victims testifying. It didn't require a smoking gun or a dramatic raid. No, it took a cameraman who spoke a little too honestly about his work schedule. That's all. A simple admission. I left someone else in charge for 3 days. That sentence detonated a billion-dollar fantasy, because in those 3 days, the freelancer became the owner, and Netflix became the buyer, and Diddy became powerless. This is what happens when you treat people like they are disposable, when you think your money makes you untouchable, when you think your influence protects you from reality, when you think the people behind the scenes will always stay quiet. You never consider that one day the people you never thought twice about, the ones you underestimated, the ones you didn't pay, the ones you didn't value, the ones you assumed would always fall in line, might be the very ones who unravel your entire empire with one tiny thread. The funniest part? The same chaos he used to create for other people is the same chaos that swallowed him. The same manipulation he used to control situations is the same manipulation that bit him in the neck. The same arrogance he used to weaponize is the same arrogance that blinded him to the consequences. And now the universe is standing there holding a mirror, forcing him to look at his own reflection. No entourage, no power, no glam, just truth. And truth is not kind to people who built their kingdoms on deception. What really sends me is that he thought yelling $1 billion was going to scare Netflix. Like Netflix doesn't have lawyers who swim through lawsuits like fish in the ocean. Like they haven't dealt with governments, billionaires, criminal organizations, royal families, and every unstable celebrity you can imagine. Netflix is sitting on a mountain laughing. They wish he would sue. They want discovery. They want the tapes. They want the emails. They want the files. They want the behind-the-scenes everything. Netflix is hungry. And the moment he files, they will eat. And you know what else strikes me? The energy around this cameraman. There is something almost sacred about the timing. You can feel the tension. It's like everyone suddenly realized that this one man might be holding the spark that lights the entire fuse. Because if he didn't know the gravity of what he was saying before, he knows now. And I pray protection over him, because you already know how people react when their empire is falling apart. Desperation makes people dangerous. Fear makes people frantic. Ego makes people reckless. And the last thing Diddy needs right now is one more person who can testify under oath. But here's the thing. It's too late. The truth is out. The admission is public. The narrative has shifted. The case has collapsed. And the world has already seen how fragile his foundation really was. His downfall didn't require a conspiracy. His downfall didn't require a mastermind. His downfall didn't require a secret organization. It required one thing: failure to pay. You cannot build an empire on unpaid debt. You cannot demand loyalty when your pockets stay closed. You cannot own what you refuse to purchase. And the universe will always, always collect what you owe. That's why this moment feels so divine. It feels like the truth finally caught up. It feels like all the pain people swallowed over the years is finally rising to the surface. It feels like the tricks and illusions and manipulations have burned away, leaving only the raw, uncomfortable reality behind. Diddy filmed his own downfall. The cameraman revealed the loophole. The freelancer held the power. And Netflix pressed play. Case over before it even began. Baby, let me tell you something, because the spiritual realm has been restless ever since this story broke. You can feel it vibrating in the air like something ancient, finally stretching its back after being ignored for too long. And when I say ancient, I mean the kind of spiritual consequence that doesn't care about the Grammys, doesn't care about the jet planes, doesn't care about the money hidden in offshore accounts, doesn't care about the gatekeepers shaking in their boots. I'm talking about the spiritual law, the one that moves whether you bow to it or not, the one that keeps receipts longer than any courtroom, the one that remembers what everybody else tries to forget. And baby, it feels like the spiritual realm has finally said, write the check, we're cashing it now. Because what we're witnessing with Diddy is not just a legal collapse, not just a PR meltdown, not just some scandal Netflix got lucky enough to catch on camera. No, this is spiritual debt coming due after decades of interest. And you can hear the ancestors clapping their hands like, we've been waiting for this moment. We've been watching the arrogance grow, watching the patterns repeat, watching the harm go unaddressed, and the hourglass just flipped itself. The cameraman story? Baby, that wasn't an accident. That was spiritual intervention disguised as human error. That was the universe saying, you built this kingdom on the backs of people you never honored. Now someone you overlooked, someone you thought was insignificant, is going to be the vessel of your undoing. That freelancer stepping in for 3 days? That wasn't coincidence. That was the spirits placing the right person at the right place at the right time with the right access, so the truth could finally escape the cage it was kept in. Because the higher powers get tired too. They get tired of watching people build empires out of manipulation. They get tired of watching innocents cry in silence. They get tired of the wicked dancing on mountaintops, as if the laws of heaven don't apply to them. So the universe starts orchestrating. It starts rearranging. It starts nudging people into positions they don't even realize they've been chosen for. And that freelancer? He didn't break into anything. He didn't steal anything. He simply fulfilled a spiritual assignment. Diddy thinks this is about Netflix. He thinks this is about PR. He thinks this is about a $1 billion lawsuit he keeps announcing but never files. But the real battle is happening in the spirit realm, where his name is being spoken in a tone that is not gentle, not forgiving, not protective. The kind of tone that only appears when someone has crossed spiritual boundaries so many times that the guardians say, enough. This is why everything around him feels like it's collapsing at once. Because when the spiritual world moves against you, nothing in the physical world can save you. Not your lawyers, not your money, not your connections, not your fame. The downfall doesn't come one piece at a time. It hits like a tidal wave that drags the whole shoreline with it. And the wildest part, the spirits chose the most poetic method imaginable. Diddy's obsession with filming everything, his pride, his ego, his belief that every moment was a movie starring him. That's what swallowed him. The spirits used his own cameras as the instrument of justice. They used the very thing he trusted most to expose him. They used the lens he hid behind to capture the truth he tried so hard to bury. That wasn't accidental. That was spiritual symmetry. That was divine irony. That was the truth saying, you recorded these moments and now we're going to play them back for the world. When Diddy woke up and decided he was going to sue Netflix, that was his ego talking. The spiritual realm had already decided the outcome. This man is swinging at shadows, trying to fight a destiny he carved with his own hands, trying to outrun a truth that has been chasing him for decades. But spiritual law is undefeated. It doesn't lose. It doesn't stutter. It doesn't tremble when men raise their voices. The reason the lawsuit will never be filed, the reason the injunction never came, the reason every attempt at control slips through his hands like sand is because spiritually the case is already closed. The downfall isn't coming. It already happened. Now the physical world is just catching up with what's already been written in the atmosphere. You can feel the shift. You can feel the heaviness. You can feel the way the universe is no longer shielding him. The protection is gone. The covering is gone. The wall of silence is gone. What remained hidden is being forced into the light. And baby, let me take this deeper, because the ancestors are not whispering. They are standing on the table screaming. When someone has lived in alignment with deception, manipulation, ego, and abuse of power, the spirits withdraw their protection. And the moment that protection lifts, the smallest crack becomes a canyon. The tiniest misstep becomes a landslide. A 3-day freelancer becomes the sledgehammer that breaks the dam. This is why nothing he does is working. Every move he makes is collapsing under him, because spiritually he's operating with no oxygen left. That's why the footage surfaced. That's why the filmmaker's statement blew up the internet. That's why Netflix isn't afraid. That's why every door he tries to shut swings open wider. Because he's trying to hold back a spiritual river with his bare hands. And when the ancestors decide someone's season of dominance is over, they don't need a scandal. They don't need a courtroom. They don't need a confession. They simply pull the thread, and everything unravels. They don't need to expose him through enemies. They expose him through his own people, his own projects, his own cameras, his own ego, his own habits, his own mouth. This is not the industry turning on him. This is the spirit world reclaiming balance. And let me tell you something eerie. You can always tell when someone's spiritual favor has expired. Look at the chaos. Look at the confusion. Look at the desperation. Look at the silence from the people who once praised him. Look at the fear in the industry. Look at how nobody will stand next to him now. That's not PR. That's spiritual isolation. When the ancestors isolate you, it is because judgment is underway. The downfall is not chaos. It is choreography. The freelancer didn't sabotage him. The universe appointed him. The footage didn't leak. The truth escaped. Netflix didn't steal anything. The spirits delivered it to the right hands. Diddy isn't being attacked. He's being uncovered. And every empire built on manipulation eventually meets the moment where the ancestors say, this chapter ends here, because spiritual debt always gets paid, and the payment is always right on time. Baby, let me begin by saying this slowly, because the atmosphere needs to shift before I even get into the details. There comes a time in every powerful person's life when they finally collide with something that is stronger than their ego, heavier than their secrets, and more relentless than their influence. And Diddy thought that force would be the courts. He thought it would be the media. He thought it would be the victims. He thought it would be the FBI. But no, the force that finally brought his empire to its knees wasn't human. It wasn't legal. It wasn't worldly. It was spiritual. It was ancestral. It was cosmic justice, stepping into a room he thought he controlled and whispering, "Move." Because for decades, Diddy crafted a reality where he controlled every chain of communication, every chain of influence, every chain of narrative, every chain of documentation. And he got comfortable, he got arrogant, he got bold in the wrong way. He built an empire on manipulation and believed he was protected because everyone in his orbit either owed him, feared him, needed him, or was tied to him through contracts, favors, intimidation, or silence. He believed every piece of footage he shot lived under his thumb. He believed every camera pointed at him was owned by him in spirit, even if not in paperwork. He believed his image was bulletproof because he curated the bulletproofness himself. But the one thing the wicked never anticipate is the moment the chain breaks at the one link they never even nurtured. That link was the freelancer. That link was the neutral party. That link was the person who didn't fear him, didn't worship him, didn't need him, and didn't move under his spiritual influence. And the universe waited. The universe watched him build this kingdom brick by brick with arrogance, with entitlement, with darkness tucked behind designer sunglasses. And the universe said, "Not yet," because timing is everything. When divine justice is preparing to strike, the universe doesn't break you when you're strong enough to hide it. It breaks you when your ego is loud, when your guard is down, when your sins have ripened, when your shadow is heavier than your body. And baby, when the universe is ready to expose a man, it doesn't use his enemies. That's too easy. It uses the people he ignores, the people beneath his awareness, the people he would never suspect. Because the spiritual realm is poetic. It is artistic. It is theatrical. It loves symmetry. And there is no greater symmetry than watching a man who controlled everyone fall because he couldn't control the one person he never thought twice about. A freelancer filling in for 3 days. That 3-day window was not coincidence. That was cosmic choreography. That was the ancestors stepping into the crack and widening it. That was divine timing saying, "I'm going to use the place you least expect to release the truth you most fear." The freelancer didn't betray him. The freelancer fulfilled an assignment. This is the point nobody else is talking about. Everybody keeps asking, how did Netflix get the footage? Why didn't the cameraman secure it better? Why wasn't there a contract? Baby, because spiritually, it was time. The universe set the table. The universe arranged the players. The universe said, "This man has been dodging accountability for decades. He has been collecting footage of his own sins, like trophies. He has been archiving manipulation. He has been documenting wickedness with the confidence of someone who believes he is untouchable. So let us take the footage he loves so much, and let us put it in the hands of someone who doesn't owe him a damn thing." And the moment that happened, the chain of control snapped. Diddy didn't lose control because he was attacked. He lost control because the one thing that upheld his entire empire, narrative dominance, was spiritually stripped away from him. When that freelancer touched those files, spiritual influence shifted, legal influence shifted, cosmic authority shifted. That freelancer wasn't just a temp, he was a vessel. He was the one person whose energy wasn't bound by fear, ego, loyalty, or intimidation. He didn't walk into that project as a believer in Diddy. He didn't walk into it as someone benefiting from proximity to power. He walked in as someone spiritually neutral. And baby, the wicked cannot handle neutral energy because neutral energy cannot be manipulated. Understand this, spiritual justice rarely comes from people who love you or people who hate you. It comes from people who don't care, people who are not emotionally entangled, people who are not spiritually tied, people who don't carry guilt or obligation toward you. That freelancer was chosen precisely because he had no relationship with Diddy at all. You can only control people whose spirits are accessible to you. But a stranger, a temp, someone not in your spiritual jurisdiction, that's where God hides the trap door. This is why karmic justice always feels random to the wicked. They never understand why the downfall didn't come from their enemies. They never understand why the bullet didn't come from the front. It came from behind. They never understand that when the universe is tired of you, it doesn't send a warning. It sends a vessel. And that vessel wasn't the government. It wasn't the victims. It wasn't the industry. It was the freelancer. A temp, a substitute, a fill-in, a ghost in the machine of his empire. And spiritually, that made him the perfect candidate. Because the universe loves to use people who are invisible to the wicked. The wicked always fear their enemies, but they never fear the people they consider meaningless. And baby, when you treat people as meaningless, you open yourself to downfall through the ones you ignored. Diddy's power was built on control. Control of people, control of rooms, control of footage, control of narratives, control of money, control of secrets. And the universe took the one area where he felt the strongest footage and used it against him. You think it's random that this was the footage that leaked? The strategic footage, the incriminating footage, the behind-the-scenes footage, the ego footage, the spiritual sickness footage, the downfall footage. This wasn't someone in his circle stabbing him in the back. This was the spirits walking into the room and flipping on the light switch while he still had sin on his hands. Because the universe said, if you film everything, then everything you film will testify. That is spiritual law. Every camera he used as a weapon is now a witness. Every recording he made is now an archive of judgment. Every file he kept is now a file the universe will use to write his ending. He thought he was documenting his success. He was documenting his downfall. And when that freelancer held that footage, Diddy spiritually lost ownership. The wicked think ownership is paperwork. The spiritual realm says ownership is intention. You don't own what you intended to use for harm. You don't own footage you captured from a place of ego. You don't own recordings that were designed to manipulate. Spiritually, he was only renting them. And the rent came due. This is why no lawsuit will be filed. This is why he's screaming without action. This is why he's threatening without paperwork. Because spiritually, the universe blocked the path. Netflix isn't afraid. The freelancer isn't afraid. The cameraman isn't afraid. Because they are all operating under divine alignment. They are in the energy of truth. And truth has no fear. Diddy is experiencing something he has never known before. Spiritual isolation. He has no allies in the realm that matters. His name is losing weight. His influence is losing shape. His ego is losing air. This isn't a man fighting Netflix. This is a man fighting a force he cannot touch, cannot bribe, cannot threaten, cannot hide from. The universe broke the chain, and once the chain breaks, the kingdom falls. His enemies didn't destroy him. His friends didn't destroy him. The freelancer didn't destroy him. The universe destroyed his illusion of control. And baby, once God, the ancestors, and the spiritual realm say, enough, billionaire or not, mogul or not, legend or not, you will bow. Because spiritual law does not expire, karma does not forget, and truth does not lose. This is Diddy's spiritual eviction. This is cosmic foreclosure. This is the ancestors collecting debt. And the most poetic part? The downfall didn't come from the people he feared. It came from the people he ignored. That's divine justice.